Yo, what's up? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to another story mix. Today, you guys see the title, got some classics today with some Benadryl reports. Some of the most dumb ones I could find, some of the most reckless ones I could find, which has come up quite a bit with this substance, we'll just say. Especially on this channel, man, we've covered quite a bit of diphenhydramine reports here. But yeah, I mean, some people just hear about it. Oh, you can hallucinate. Some trippy shit could happen. You can get it at Walgreens or the corner store, wherever the fuck. And yeah, it's not the most healthy thing. It can be very dangerous. Could be deadly at the right dose, right conditions, right? So with that, these reports are like cautionary tales almost. Could have gone more worse. Some do go kind of bad. You'll just see what's up. But let me know what I should cover next. And without further ado, let's dive right into these. Eating Legos. This isn't something I was expecting or wanting to write about. In my mind, a few weeks ago, I had quit DPH for good, wanting absolutely nothing to do with it. But everyone makes mistakes, and that's why I'm writing this. I'll just start off by explaining that boredom got the best of me. I decided to go steal 1200 milligrams of DPH from my local convenience store. Quarantine was getting boring, and I was looking for a way to spice things up, even though I told myself I would never touch the stuff again. The 2 boxes I had sat in my closet for a day until I got bored enough to take it. It was Saturday night, going into Easter Sunday, and yes, I knew it was going to be Easter. It was around 7 when I took 800 milligrams. This was all I had planned on taking for the night, because the last time I had done 1200 milligrams, I ended up getting caught. I stayed up, tripping away until about 3 in the morning. The trip I had wasn't bad. It was a typical DPH trip. I saw things breathe, talked to people who weren't there, etc. It was at this point where I came to a fork in the road. Do I take more, or do I just go to sleep and take the rest another day? I wish I had just taken the rest another day. 400 milligrams more down the hatch. I don't remember anything between this point and what happened next. According to my parents, around 6 in the morning was when I decided to just take my dog for a walk. One thing I've always said to people is to never go out unattended while delirious. But here I was doing just that. I remember being on the walk and thinking I had lost my phone. I spent the entirety of the walk retracing my steps, looking for my phone, thinking, how could I be so stupid to have lost my phone? Not even remembering that I was delirious. As I would find out later, my phone was just at my house. After being out with my dog for about an hour and a half, my dad finally found me a few blocks away from our house and told me to get in his car. I didn't think anything of it, so I got in the car with my dog. As I got in the car, I heard my dad's voice say, "You look like John Stamos." I looked over at him and, in a confused tone, said, "John Stamos?" He looked at me weirdly and didn't understand why I said that, because as it turns out, he hadn't said anything at all. It was at this point that he figured out I was on Benadryl. After getting home and being lectured, I was told to go stay in my room with the door open. My dad came in, and I asked him if I could take my dog for another walk. He said yes, so I started putting my shoes and coat on. As I was doing this, my sister walks past my room and asked, "Where do you think you're going?" I said, "Taking Barney out for a walk." She laughed and said, "No, you're not." I started to get frustrated and told her I just asked Dad, and I argued with her until I realized that I had gotten permission to go on a walk from someone who didn't exist. As I sat in my room looking for things to do, I noticed I still had some of those really small Legos. For a while, I was trying to build what the directions said, but after a little success with that, I ended up with the Legos in my mouth. I don't know how or why, but I must have thought the Legos were pills because I proceeded to put them in my mouth and swallow them all down excitedly. I still don't know how I didn't choke, and I still don't know how I went from knowing they were Legos to thinking they were pills. The point is, I eat Legos. There isn't anything very interesting past this point, so I'll say this is a good point to end the report on. But before I do, I'd like to say that anyone who craves delirium Remember, you are sacrificing your body and mind to reach a state that puts you at risk. You have no idea what you're capable of doing or thinking of doing while in this state. I didn't expect to eat Legos, but I did. It could end up being more serious than that, though. Like, I don't know, jumping in front of a car. Take DPH at your own risk, or don't take it at all. Have a goody day.
Faces of Horror. Hello. When I was enlisted in the Marines and in ITB, Infantry Training Battalion, I had a 96 for Thanksgiving, a 96-hour Liberty. I decided to stay at my cousin's, who was a few states away from base. I get over there the first day. We shoot the shit and whatnot. The day goes on, my cousin is chilling with me, and we go hang out in town. I bring out that I like doing drugs because me and him smoke weed together. I asked him to take me to the CVS. So I get to the CVS and I go in and buy a stupid amount of Delsum. Definitely 2 bottles, maybe 3. I don't remember. This was quite a while ago. I also bought a bottle of DPH. But later we go back to his house. It's probably 8 at night and I immediately take the stuff. All the bottles I had and probably 600 milligrams of DPH. I go to his room, lay down, and chill. An hour passes. I look in the mirror next to his bed and see a jaguar just chilling behind me, laying down. I was out of it and just so amazed, forgetting I had taken the drugs. I looked over and it was gone. Then it hit me. Oh shit, this is gonna fuck me up. I say it, throw on YouTube, and start watching videos about spiritual shit by Kundalini. As I watch, I hear what's like a train. I think to myself, what the fuck? Then the TV turns as if I was staring into dark woods. A face pops out at me, almost like it was running to me. His face was very evil and started screaming a very loud groan at me. I was astonished by what the fuck had just happened. I realized that this is going to be a crazy night. I got hit with a very hard pinch of a feeling of having to piss with that groaning sound again. I stand up as fast as I can try and look out the door. Out there was a very tall, almost Japanese ghost girl pacing in the hallway. I can almost swear it was real. I quickly planned a way to the bathroom as its back was turned. I piss and head back to the room. I remember blacking out, then waking up in like a light tower room with people I had never seen before. Some dude and a chick. I asked, "Where's my jewel, dude?" He looked at me. Then I woke up out of the trance next morning. I get up to get breakfast and struggle to walk. I was afraid that I was permanently stuck with the RoboWalk. I had that the rest of the day. Next day I was fine. That's all. I do not include my name for legal reasons. Let me know if you post this. I have more military shit.
Talking to the dead. I am a frequent user of DPH and use around 400 milligrams every night. This dosage allows me to relax and get high. I decided that I wanted to explore the delirium effects of DPH, so at 12 a.m., I took 1150 milligrams. At 12:30 a.m., I started feeling significantly stoned, similar to what I feel on 400 milligrams, but more intense. I started making music, as I am a producer, mainly hip hop, on the side. I noticed that I kept losing my train of thought and not remembering what I was about to add to the song. I decided this would be too difficult, so I started listening to music instead. I started noticing every little thing about the songs I was listening to, and the music felt more alive than it ever had before. 1 a.m. I decided to get in bed and watch YouTube on my phone. One thing I noticed was that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't read any of the words on the screen. I decided I would go into the living room to pet my dogs. It was very difficult to get up and I could barely walk, so I crawled instead. When I got in the living room, my dogs looked so foreign to me, I was too scared to even touch them. I decided to crawl up to the bathroom, climb up on the counter, and pee in the sink. As I'm doing this, my mom says from behind, "What the hell are you doing, Don?" Don is my middle name, and my mom has never referred to me by only my middle name, so I thought this was really weird. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Just chillin'." I thought it was weird that she was in there,
given that the door had been closed the whole time. I looked in the reflection of the mirror, and she wasn't there. I turned around, and she had disappeared. I rolled off the counter and climbed back into my bed. At this point, I noticed that there were bugs everywhere. This was unsettling, as I absolutely hate bugs. I looked in my closet, and my dad was standing there with a flashlight. My dad died this summer, so at this point, I said out loud, "I'm trippin'." My dad asked me how many pills I had taken, and I told him, and we shared casual small talk for a bit before he disappeared. This was very nice, even though I knew it wasn't real. At this point, I completely lost track of time and couldn't read a clock. I decided to try to go to sleep. I kept falling asleep and waking up repeatedly. I think I blacked out or just fell asleep after a while because I can't recall anything until 10 a.m. the next day. I still felt a little high, but all the delirium effects had gone away. For the next few days, I felt very disconnected from the world, and everything I looked at seemed so foreign, even my own mom. I still use DPH to get high, but I don't plan on using it for delirium purposes ever again.
Logical override. I know a lot of people will say, if you have weed, why use DPH? It's simple. Just as DXM and LSD can give people more spiritual and introspective trips, DPH allows you to gain a more broad perspective. And to help counter the dysphoric feeling, I used MDMA and cannabis. The MDMA helps counter the dysphoria, and the cannabis helps potentiate the DPH and also helps provide a calming effect. 8 p.m. Took 150 milligrams MDMA and 700 milligrams DPH. The MDMA was in the form of a capsule, and the DPH was in the form of Benadryl 25 milligram capsules. 8:05 p.m. After taking the MDMA and DPH, I went outside and smoked a small 1-gram joint, followed by a black and mild filter tip. I plan to smoke another joint during the come up. 8:15 p.m. Came back inside and worked on various coding projects on my laptop while waiting for the come up. 8:40 p.m. Started noticing effects of the MDMA. 9 p.m. During the last hour, I consumed 5 glasses of water to help reduce hangover effects the next day. At this time, I started noticing more contrasting colors and more pronounced sounds. 9:10 p.m. Come up starts. No nausea so far. Legs feel like 1,000 pounds. 9:45 p.m. Come up complete. I went back outside, walking quite awkwardly, and smoked another 1-gram joint. Began noticing small moving objects around darker corners. After the joint, I smoked a cigarette. 10 p.m. Went back inside and got some milk and waffles to help with the extreme cotton mouth. Couldn't taste any of the food, but at least my mouth wasn't dry. At this point, I began hearing small auditory hallucinations, but still able to tell from reality. 10:15 p.m. Feeling butterflies in my stomach, probably from the MDMA. I washed dishes and put up my laptop. My short-term memory is fucked at this point. I begin seeing people appearing in front of me, then quickly vanishing. I went up to my room and watched trippy videos on YouTube. 10:45 p.m. No nausea so far, just horrible cotton mouth and difficulty holding urine for more than 30 minutes. I am beginning to see random people walking in and out of my room. The hallucinations are very complex, and I'm hearing actual voices having nonsensical conversations in the background. 11 p.m. It is impossible to tell reality from hallucinations. I am also slipping in and out of consciousness. I remember talking to my closet door, 100% convinced it was trying to hide my aliens from the fire department. I finally realized I was tripping, and I went to fight the door, and my hand struck wood. No nausea, but massive body load and cotton mouth. 11:30 p.m. I decide that trying to watch a movie is pointless, and decide to lay down and listen to music. I listen to mainly Pink Floyd and Sidewalks and Skeletons. Very vivid closed-eye visuals, as well as auditory hallucinations. Estimate 12:30 a.m. I must have fallen asleep somewhere around this time. I had set an alarm, so in case I did fall asleep, I would wake up near peaking time. 1:30 a.m. Alarm goes off, very disturbing. The second I wake up, I am plunged into complete dysphoria. I am in a complete state of confusion and paranoia. It takes me 10 minutes to even realize that I am awake. I then begin to think that it is 1:30 p.m. instead of a.m. I got up and went to the bathroom and saw it was dark. At this point, I think I missed out on the end of the world. I even looked up, has World War III started? After spending around 20 minutes in the bathroom, worried about world affairs, I decide to go get a snack. 2 a.m. I go downstairs to the kitchen to get a snack. Somewhere along the way there, I got mixed up because I found myself in the garage. After some more confusing time in the garage, talking to hallucinations, I finally went to the kitchen. 2:20 a.m. I am now back in my room. I then realized I hadn't got a snack yet, so I go back downstairs to get some food. 2:30 a.m. I eat 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and go back to my room. Keep in mind that the whole time, I am continually having visual and auditory hallucinations. These hallucinations are not scary, but make no sense whatsoever. One of them was my sister telling me that I needed to eat a raw egg to prevent the Cold War. 2:45 a.m. I am finally back in my room. I am beginning to come down now. I watch TikToks. 3:45 a.m. Come down is complete. I feel exhausted and fall asleep until 9 a.m. when I get up. Comments. The trip was by far the best I have experienced. The hallucinations were very real, but not scary because of the MDMA. Drinking a lot of water before a DPH trip will help prevent hangovers, and I recommend nicotine during the trip. Final review, 5 out of 5 stars. I recommend highly. Have a great day. Happy tripping. Smiley face. My friend's 900 milligram DPH report. Just want to say, man, I love your channel and reports. Keep it up. It's very entertaining. I hope you are successful with your channel and it grows. Much love. So my friend, let's call him Jim for privacy reasons, took 900 milligrams of DPH at my house. They were assured sleep pills from Dollar Tree, which is where I got my DXM in my other report because it's so close to my house. He took 36 of them, which equals to 900 milligrams, after not eating anything all day. We were in my room and I washed him down all of them, and then after, he left. I FaceTimed him to see how it affected him. After an hour, he said he felt nothing but relaxation and no hallucinations. After another 30 minutes, he told me he saw a shadow of a tree on his ceiling, but that's the only thing he saw. After another hour, there were still no noticeable effects for him. He seemed disappointed and said it's not working. I told him just wait a while. I had a lot of experience with Benadryl, and I knew it would have kicked in soon because of the amount he took, but I was surprised how long it took to kick in for him. He took it at 8 p.m., and it was now 10:30 p.m. He said he didn't feel anything, although I did notice his eyes darting around more than usual, and he was listening to music and stopped and was just sitting there, not doing anything. He hung up FaceTime because he had to use the bathroom and said he would call me back, but he never did. After a while, I called him back, and I knew immediately when he answered something was different, and he was definitely fucked up. I noticed he would talk to someone who wasn't there and then mumble, and then I'd say something, and he would immediately cut me off and say, "What did you say?" in a very low and slurred tone. This happened multiple times over and over, and I would notice him staring in the direction of his closet. After a while, he just got up, left the room, and I didn't see him come back. At this time, the DPH I took a while ago was starting to kick in. I took 800 milligrams about an hour ago from this point. After that, I didn't talk to him, but I do remember, now that I think about it, I was talking to him, but my phone was dead. I remember it dying while watching a YouTube video after I hung up. As the DPH started peaking, I kept talking to him on FaceTime when my phone was dead, and this happened over and over. In the morning, I checked my calls, and there were no calls after I hung up. I know this because the DPH had not fully kicked in when I hung up and my phone died. In the morning, I texted my friend to see what happened, and he didn't reply until the afternoon. The only thing that he said back was, "Never again."
I said, "What do you mean?" And I called him, and he told me about what happened. He said that he left his house at 4:30 a.m., came back at 5 a.m., and couldn't get inside his house. His mom had to let him in, and she thought he was on meth because of his dilated pupils. He told me he had no memory of leaving, and he only found out in the morning after his mom showed him the security footage of him leaving. He explained to his mom he had taken DPH, and she didn't believe him until she looked up what it can do. He also told me that he was seeing shadow people spiraling around on his wall, and was seeing people walking around his room and in his closet. He said he was seeing his close friends in his room, and then got paranoid because he thought his mom would find out his friends are over without permission. He also said he was seeing spiders on his wall and saw the face of one of his closest friends peeking out from the closet. He said that his computer monitor turned a very strange shade of green, and he heard his mom calling him, and then he went to the door, only to find out that no one was there. One of the most interesting parts of his experience was that he went to make an egg sandwich, and he remembers carrying a plate with the sandwich into his room, only to find out that the plate never had a sandwich on it, and it was a hallucination. He also found a banana on his windowsill that he has no memory of. He is traumatized about looking in the mirror. He said this was the scariest part about his trip. He looked in the mirror and his eyes were completely black. It was terrifying to him and he started freaking out. Other than that, he doesn't remember most of the trip and decided he does not like DPH. This trip made him stop doing any drug other than weed and completely changed his mindset.
I had a near death experience. I'm not sure how to go about this, so I'll just repost what I had written on Reddit. Hopefully, it inspires others to stay safe. This happened a couple of days ago, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. I feel the same sensations every time I think about it, and my heart is racing now. I'm scared still. Anyways, to the point. About 3 p.m. 2 days ago, I took 750 milligrams worth of Benadryl tablets, thinking that would be enough to end it. I suffer with schizophrenia, and it's having a negative effect on me daily. I refuse to take the medication for it because it makes me feel dull, and I lose control of parts of my body as if they weren't there. They won't move when you want them to, etc. So it's been affecting my mental health and my aspects of life in general. I'm 18 years old and have nothing most do, like a driver's license or a vehicle. I'm currently unemployed, so I felt like ending it. After taking the pills, I went to a nearby Petco with my two cousins, and we bought a hamster. While we were in there, the medication started to make me hallucinate worse than usual. I ran back to the car. My heartbeat was a little higher than usual, and I went to start it so the engine would warm up. From my point of view, as soon as I started the car, it shot backwards at what felt like 20 miles per hour or so. I slammed my hands on the brakes as I was in the passenger seat. No one knew I was under the influence of this medication yet. About 20 minutes later, things calmed down for a second. We went to GameStop and Walmart. I felt fine. Shortly afterwards, I went to my female cousin's boyfriend's house with both cousins. As soon as I sat down, the walls started to move as if I was on acid. Wisps of white smoke traveled towards me, and I heard the sound of huge bells being rung, like Silent Hill. I remained calm at this point, accepting this before I die. I began to shake. My pulse began to skyrocket. I could hear my heart in my ears, and I lost feeling in my hands and feet. My cousin looked at me worriedly, so I changed my mind and told her what I did because I finally saw how selfish it was going to be of me to do so. So we all get in the car, and I know where the hospital is, but I can't tell them. I'd lose my memory of what we were just discussing, as it happens all the time anyways, but it was worse now. After just one sentence, I forgot what I was trying to say, so I suggest we pull over and call an ambulance. We pull into the Walmart parking lot, and she calls. Tears were streaming down her and my other cousin's face. I turned pale, and my heartbeat at this point was skipping for a few seconds, then beating rapidly. I glanced at both of them and said, "It's too late. I'm done for. Thanks for being here for me." As soon as I said that, I felt calm, yet terrified as everything went dark, and I felt the sensation of my consciousness being torn away from me and that it was really all over. Next thing I know, I spring up taking frantic breaths. The hallucinations at this point were typical of DPH trips that I've read. Translucent spiders would be caught in my field of view, coming at me for a second before going back to where I first saw them. I wasn't scared of these, but instead started to calm my breathing down. I knew I had just died, but it wasn't close to over yet. Soon, the EMTs show up and take me into the ambulance. Memory is hazy here. From what I was told, I had a 2.5 minute seizure and had the same feeling again. This time I fought to keep my consciousness in me, not feeling or knowing where I was at. I felt no sensation other than this other body trying to leave. I woke up in the hospital and had several conversations that went nowhere with doctors. I'd forget what they said, be unable to hear them, or at least I'd hear the words and immediately forget them. My family came in and was very disappointed with me, and it was honestly the hardest part of all this for me. I was just doing well at my aunt's house, getting interviews and jobs and whatnot. I failed to realize how much everyone meant to me before it was almost gone. I never cry, but 2 days ago, I just couldn't stop. I just dealt with the strange visuals and hallucinations. Some were funny and made no sense. Others were footsteps and little whisperings behind my hospital bed before I went to the ICU. I had to lie to my doctors and stuff about why I did it, as I can't handle another inpatient treatment. The strangest thing that happened hallucination wise was a small crack in reality, seemingly rainbow in color, and it flew towards me, becoming a flying fish with a demon head. It sat right next to my eye for a second before turning into the head of thousands of animals, one after the other. Then it became a black sphere made of cubes before imploding into nothing. Even though it was just a hallucination, it impacted me greatly, as I think my general appreciation for all life was vastly increased. It showed me that all forms of life die and become nothing, and it's not just me. Eventually, after 2 days, I'm still very shaken up about the experience, and I feel lucky to be here. I'm now kicked out of where I was living and lost my job where I was supposed to start. I feel hopeless, but lucky to be here. Any comment will help, as I have huge amounts of anxiety every time I think about how close I was to death, and I almost feel the same sensations. Is this what PTSD is like? Anyways, stay alive. It's only when you're about to lose it all that you understand how much your one life means before it's gone. I'm glad I have this new insight. Have a nice day/night, and thanks for reading.
My Christian family will never know. First of all, let me tell you how much I love your videos. Okay, I decided to try DPH for the first time. The reason I chose DPH was because it was the only drug I can get without anyone finding out. We've got this huge bottle of equate diphenhydramine, so I decided to use those pills. I had already been up kind of late doing some research and listening to trip reports. You see, I'm not even supposed to be on the internet at that time of night, at 11 p.m., but I was. My family is a Christian family, so I knew if I got caught doing drugs, there'd be a long chat with my parents. I finally decided I was going to try DPH. I took 8 25 milligram pills for a dose of 200 milligrams. Of course, I was all scared about what I'd be feeling, because I'd never done any drugs before. While I was waiting for the DPH to kick in, I listened to some music. The first things I started feeling were a shaky body and a dry mouth. I remember I was listening to the song Love on the Radio by Matthew West. At the beginning of the song, there's some snapping. I remember jumping every time I heard him snap during the song. After that, I decided to turn on something else. I decided to go for some good old Stephen Curtis Chapman. I listened to that for a while, then tried to get up and move around. I felt very heavy and as if my knees were giving out on me. I remember how dry my mouth was. I didn't get any crazy hallucinations that night. I hadn't even reached my peak before I fell asleep. The next night, I decided to give it one more go. I took 15 25 milligram pills for a dose of 375 milligrams. I pretty much was feeling the same way I did the past night. The only difference was the hallucinations. It looked like there was a thick, colorful something swirling towards me. I also thought I saw bugs on the wall that would occasionally dive towards me. After reaching my peak, I went to sleep.
First diphenhydramine trip. So on a Friday night, I didn't have anything to do and I was bored as hell. So I decided to go on YouTube and just look around. I was watching one of Goblin's videos when I saw a video about diphenhydramine tripping in the recommended section. I clicked on it and it seemed pretty interesting. So I decided to go downstairs, get some Benadryl, and try to trip. At this point, my town was dry of weed, and that's why I tried this. After I got it, I decided to get some chips and some drinks, just in case I got super hungry during the trip. I went back upstairs, sat on my bed, and dumped a bottle of Benadryl on my nightstand. I didn't want to take too much because I didn't know what would happen. So I took it in doses. First I took 3 25-milligram capsules and lay back and continued watching YouTube. After 10 minutes, I took another 3 and continued doing the same thing. After about 5 minutes, I said fuck it and took pretty much the whole bottle. I don't remember how many exactly. I lay down for another 30 minutes and didn't feel anything. I decided to get up and try and walk around. To my surprise, I stumbled and pretty much fell on my ass. I got back up in bed and just kept watching YouTube. About 45 to 50 minutes after, I took the rest of the bottle. I really started to feel it. I felt really disoriented and confused. I decided to take a sip of my drink, but when I went to reach for it, I saw my hand had black dots all over it. I freaked out and immediately just put my hand back down and just lied there. 15 minutes later, my LED strips behind my TV started changing to different tones of the purple it was set on, and the light that was shown onto the wall was wiggling back and forth. It was really confusing, but cool at the same time, so I just kept watching. While watching this, bugs just appeared out of nowhere onto my wall and just infested it. I was super confused by this, but kind of fascinated. All of a sudden, I hear my friend call my name. I could hear it, but it sounded really distant. I knew he couldn't be there, since this friend lived in a completely other state. I just blew this off because I figured it was just the diphenhydramine, which, of course it was. So I just laid in my bed and continued watching YouTube while my friend steadily called my name. All of a sudden, I see people just moving in and out of my room. I couldn't make out any faces, but I knew they were people I knew. I saw my dog also just trot past casually. My dog was downstairs with my grandma. All of a sudden, I just felt the urge to throw up, so I try and get up, but I just completely fail to do so. At this point, I'm so disoriented, I can barely crawl to my door, but I do make it and crawl to the bathroom. My bathroom was literally right next to my room. I get in the bathroom and just sit over the toilet for a good 5 minutes before I just start puking my guts out. I threw up for about 10 minutes before I started dry heaving. After about 10 more minutes of dry heaving, it stops. I try and stand up and it works this time, though I do feel really unstable. I decided to turn on the bathtub and take a hot bath to try and sober myself up. I sit in the bath for around 30 minutes, just staring at the ceiling. I get out and I feel a lot better, a lot more sober. I dry off and stumble back to my bedroom. I lay back down and completely just knock out. In the morning I felt a bit shitty, but otherwise I was okay. This was the first and last time I've ever diphenhydramine tripped.
Dark, twisted faces. I've been experimenting with DXM for a little while now, and had great experiences with it. One day my friend Nick calls me, saying I should try Benadryl, aka DPH. I get curious, look up the effects, and found it causes scary hallucinations. I've never had a super bad trip before, so I was kinda naive. One day I go to my local Walgreens and get a box of 25-milligram liquid caps. I called my friend Nick and decided to take 400 milligrams of DPH and 200 milligrams of DXM. I thought the DXM would make me dissociated and the trip better. At 7:30 p.m., I took doses of both on a somewhat empty stomach. 7:50 p.m. is when I started to feel the effects. I felt the DXM and it felt good at first. I was relaxed and the music sounded great. Then the room started to get darker and I felt kind of paranoid for no reason. At 8 p.m., I started to see black dots on the wall and thought nothing of it. By now, I feel very heavy and not very social. It hit me like a train. I saw my water bottle moving with legs and thought nothing of it. I just went on my phone where the time was changing and I can barely type. When I stood up, I felt extremely heavy and can barely walk. At 8:25 is when stuff started to get a little scary. I started to see spiders crawling on me. I jumped out of bed and freaked out, so I looked on my phone to calm down and was still hallucinating hard. I would listen to music and it was very slowed and skewed sounding, kinda cool sounding. I just laid in bed and listened to music for a while. Then my brother came in. My heart dropped for what I saw. His face was all black. His eyes were red. His eyes were twitching in a very creepy way, like he was crazy. I snapped out of it and reminded myself that I'm high. He said something to me, but I forgot what. I looked at my phone to see pictures of people, but they looked like demons. Everyone I saw had black or twisted faces. I went outside to chill out. It was a bad idea. I walked into this park. By now it was nighttime. I was fine, then I hear screaming out of nowhere, so I start to head back till I meet my friend Julian. My memory is kind of foggy, but I remember talking to him about my experience till someone shouts in the distance. I look over, and then look back, and my friend is gone. I come back home and pass out. When I wake up, I feel relieved the trip was over and thankful. I like the effects it gave me, but if I were to do it again, I would do more DXM.
The DPH Diaries. Hello there. I'm generally too stoned to remember my many trips in detail, but I've always wanted to share my experiences, but I also don't want to put in the effort of writing. So I thought you would find this shit in my notes mildly amusing. 1100 milligrams DPH. T75. The ghouls are out. Please, dear God, don't bring back the spiders. Y129, semicolon, lowercase aa, capital MW. Everything is looking. The ghouls are greatest. The body load is too much. Oh shit. 656 and 2 Ritalin ingested. Join the 900 club, but earn a hug from you. The mother spider is always scariest. Think, don't conquer spiders. Double vision, 150 beats per minute, respiratory visuals, depression, non-stop shaking. Forgot to mention, I'm on Flexeril. The worms pop live fireworks. 9. Major tweak mode. Can't take my Klonopin either. Starting to have muscle spasms. 750 to T450. The ceilings are morphing into crabs. Talking skulls. Scarecrow is the Reaper. T635. Guess I don't have to worry about carbon monoxide due to my imaginary one. They changed from spider to crab, Tom Froggy. No shadow people. Yee. Fuck, I lied. T801. A middle finger just came out of my poster, and the stray bow cats. T9. The ceiling light is putting a red dot on my head. It's out to get me. 175. T65. Why is there a bull on my couch? Got heart surgery today. Man moves chair towards me and walks up to me. Sits down, changes colors. Music playing for nothing. No motor skills. More shadow gorilla. Color change. The tapestry is a smiling clown. He took the clothing off the hanger. My first time, 900 milligrams. I was very bored one day, and I really had to want a trip. I've had experience with shrooms, DMT, DXM, acid, and much more. I saw something on Benadryl, and I wanted to try it. I ended up taking 900 milligrams at once for my first go, and just sat watching Netflix for about an hour. I looked at my phone, and all the letters were changing colors and into numbers. They had a shade of red, green, and blue under them, and words were typing themselves. I thought it was really cool, but as soon as I looked up, I heard a car horn honking repeatedly. My house was really dark, and I was seeing faces and spiders, so I started to panic. I ran into my room, and I kept thinking my mom was screaming at me, but she went to California the night before. Then my friend that lives in a whole different state walked into my room and asked if I want to smoke. So I said yes, went to him, and he disappeared. I remember closing my eyes and thinking I was texting people, but my phone was all the way across the room. The rest is kind of blurry at the moment, but I am intrigued by the psychoactive effects of DPH. Trip like acid? I was once on Reddit and saw people saying, oh, if you take Red Bull and Benadryl, you'll trip like acid. Note that I'm 15, turning 16 in December. My dad always got energy drinks, so I said why not. I took 7 pills and drank the whole bottle of the energy drink. 15 minutes later, I didn't feel shit, so I decided to take 5 more Benadryl pills. Immediately 5 minutes later, the walls were vibrating and I could hear colors. I know it sounds retarded, but I would look at any wall and it would start dripping, like it was melting with color, and it had a synesthesia sound. It was around 6 p.m. when I felt all the effects. I got scared, so I did 3 hours of research on what I had taken, and I found out the lethal amounts range between 500 to 1,000 milligrams. But I read that people take way over that, so I just stood with, I'm never going to take over 500 milligrams. I went in my room and stayed to myself. It was really dark due to daylight savings, and I began to get really paranoid. That's when I regretted everything. I originally took it because I heard you had hallucinations, but these were no rainbows and dancing mushroom trips. It was a scary nightmare where there were shadow people watching you, bugs on you or on your walls, and I had a ton of auditory hallucinations. I locked myself in my room because I was scared and just put on music. The thing said was that if you take Benadryl, diphenhydramine, it makes you tired, but if you stay up and fight the tiredness, then the euphoria kicks in. I stayed up in a corner because I kept seeking things and felt things on my skin crawling on me. I never knew that a drug that I have a million of could be used to get high. I stopped seeing stuff the next day, so I knew the trip was over, but me being dumb decided to do it again, thinking that if I did it in the morning, the effects would be different. But I did have school. So before I left the house, I took 16 pills, and the pills were 25 milligrams each. After leaving, I was on the bus, and that's where it kicked in. The bus shrank, and it felt like gravity increased twice what it was. The kids didn't have faces. I heard my own heart beating through my neck, and when I got off the bus, I couldn't walk, as if there were 50-pound dumbbells attached to my ankles. I went to the bathroom as soon as I walked into school, and I couldn't believe my reflection. It was a weird experience. I wouldn't recommend it as a drug, but if you want a trip, and have dissociative hallucinations, then go for it. 600 milligrams. So I do some weed and dabs all the time. One time I couldn't get any weed, so I went to a store and bought some motion sickness pills. The person at the desk asked me why I bought them, and I said I was going on an airplane and I get motion sick. So I was sleeping at my grandma's house, and around 7:30, when the sun sets, I took 400 milligrams, and then I went on a walk with my brother and little cousin and did 200 more milligrams. I got back to my grandma's, and to pass time, I did chores, then told my grandma I was going to sleep at about 8. I decided to FaceTime my cousin. I was talking to him and telling him about what I did, and then noticed thousands of ants on the walls. I knew this was the start of the trip because I also felt drunk. Then I went in my room and turned off the lights. My brother was in there making beats on a laptop, so there was some light, and the first thing I noticed was a girl in the hall. The hall was pitch black, and when I looked at her, she would move. I would hear the door opening, but the whole time the door was closed, and it was just a wooden panel on the door that looked like a girl. Also, my little cousin was in the room, and she was watching TV. I saw a skinnier version of my grandma walk in and lay down right next to me. I had a conversation with her and thought it was totally normal, but then my brother told me to go to sleep because he didn't want my cousin to find out. So I went to sleep and kept waking up to flowers growing out of my body. I would try to grab them, but they would disappear. Then I would try to grab my water, and every time I did, I would have to grab hundreds of fake bottles only to find the real bottle on my other side. Then I made the mistake of going out of the room and had to talk to my grandma. She told me to grab some water, and I did. I could barely manage the conversation and almost got caught. Then I used the bathroom, went in a different room, and slept on the top bunk. I would talk to my best friend who was just standing there. That's all I remember. I woke up the next day, and my grandma told me I looked like a zombie that night and told her I was super tired. I liked the experience and did it again the next night, but with my brother, and had a bad experience. So I told myself I wouldn't do it again, and 2 days later, I did it again when I was with my cousin, but I wouldn't do it now.
1,750 milligrams. Before I start, I would like to point out that this is my first time trying diphenhydramine in doses higher than 10-25 milligram pills at a time. Basically, I jumped straight from 250 milligrams to 1750 milligrams. I would also like to point out that because I have ADHD and I am constantly very energetic, the diphenhydramine did not make me sleepy or drowsy. So, to start, I took 10 at a time every 2 minutes or so until I reached 70 before I decided that it would be enough and went back to my room. Note that I wasn't aware that the diphenhydramine is a deliriant substance at high doses, so I had no idea any of this was coming. I sat down, relaxed, and waited for the effects. It started off by making my body far too heavy to move, extreme shaking, inability to remember what I was doing or why I was doing it, etc. As a result of this, I was shaking far too excessively for me to control my own movement, and I knocked everything sitting on my desk onto the floor. Hearing this, my brother, who knows I do acid, smoke weed, take MDMA, etc., came to the door to check if I was okay. As soon as he opened the door, he knew I was tripping. But he didn't know the full extent of what was to come. He thought I had taken acid. From that point on, I essentially had a trip sitter watching over me, my brother. Shortly after my brother began watching over me, the hallucinations began. The first vivid hallucination, full-fledged, can't tell if this is real or a hallucination, was when I realized house centipedes and spiders were crawling out of the walls. I was terrified. The paranoia from 1750 milligrams of diphenhydramine stacked on top of seeing two creatures I feared to no end crawling out the walls in all directions took me to another level of fear that I have never experienced and that I will never probably experience again. The first human hallucination began with seeing the rapper Lil Yachty sitting in my brother's chair playing on his computer. In the state that I was, I screamed, "Who are you?" and repeatedly swung in the direction of this hallucination, only for it to disappear right in front of me. Now, I'm a big fan of the sport MMA, and my friend Jacob is a huge fan of the sport as well. Jacob appeared behind me while I was looking into the mirror and thinking about the fact that there were spiders literally crawling out of the walls all around me. I held a 15-minute uninterrupted conversation with this hallucination of my friend before he finally stopped moving and stared at me blankly for about a minute straight. When I went to check if he was okay, my hand slipped through him. If you've done diphenhydramine, you know this is the worst feeling the drug gives you. For whatever reason, when you put your hand through someone you've already been talking to for 15 minutes and they disappear, you realize that they were never even there. It delivers the most very intense feeling of loneliness that you could ever imagine. It terrified me. I returned to my computer, attempting to log onto my computer for another 15 to 30 minutes before finally giving up. At least in my head, that is. My brother told me that I was literally trying to type my password for my computer in on a Subway sandwich bun. After seeing the state I was in for long enough, my brother decided to put me to bed. He helped me into my bed, pulled the covers over me, and called into work to inform that he wasn't going to be coming in for the night. This is where the stranger, more detailed hallucinations began. I had calmed down a bit by that point, and the paranoia had primarily faded. The spiders and house centipedes weren't coming out of the walls anymore. I sat down and logged into my phone, only to feel something crawling up my leg. I looked down, only to see what appeared to be a dead rat with boxing gloves on. This was definitely one of the stranger parts of the trip. I logged onto my phone, and it displayed the text in the news article layout, "Dead boxer rat, in your bed." I was astonished, to say the least. At this point, I realized that I was seeing things and I worried that it might actually be my cat and that I could have killed it on accident during my trip. The cat was okay, my brother took it out of the room and made sure I stayed away from it. This was the beginning of the very worst part of the trip. I looked around and saw multiple shadowy figures of cats prancing around the room in different directions. If I touched them, they'd disappear. I had no idea whatsoever what was real and what wasn't, and it terrified me. The looming feeling of impending doom was horrific. My brother actually informed me that I fell asleep, woke up at around 3 a.m. still tripping, and went to go and ask my dad to take me to McDonald's. Thankfully, my brother stopped me. Eventually, I returned to my bed only to literally see a fucking gorilla swinging around on my ceiling fan. This was the most awe-inspiring hallucination I have ever had, even having done 12 tabs of acid. At this point, I finally decided enough was enough and put my head under the covers in order to fall asleep. I woke up the morning after unable to feel most emotions, and my life felt like actual garbage for the next 3 days. This drug, if continuously used, can push you to suicide, similar to MDMA, which explains the feeling of emotional disconnection. This was the most terrifying yet interesting drug trip of my life, and even though it was genuinely terrifying at points, I appreciated the experience quite a bit. If you guys want to acquire dementia and brain tumors at an early age by continuously, recreationally using this drug, be my guest. However, you're the only person to blame when your life is ruined as a result of using a drug that isn't even enjoyable. Thank you for listening.